said that ESPN has posted that through the games that are done, 181 out of 20 million brackets remain perfect. And, man, you got to wonder those 181, because mine died in, I think, maybe the first game that was played yesterday. That's amazing. Grayson Grundhoefer, Sic'Em365.com, recruiting analyst, co-host of the Bearcast with Craig, and he talked Baylor men's basketball. We'll get to that in a minute. Grayson, did you do a bracket, and are you one of those 181 that are perfect?
I wish that I was one of those 181. I'm sure that most of those people that, filled out a bracket and are still there, I would think that's probably your second, third, 10th, bracket, probably not your first one. But my Final Four is still in there, so that's nice. Arizona was a team that I know a lot of people picked, and I had them losing to Baylor in the Sweet 16, so we'll see. So I think I'm off to a decent start, but honestly, it's March and the madness continues, as we saw, yesterday, just so many games that were really close between lower seeds and higher seeds. And so even though, only a couple true upsets happened with Princeton and Furman, there were some other ones that were pretty close, with Louisiana Lafayette against Tennessee, and then College of Charleston versus San Diego State as well. So, yeah, it's been a crazy tournament already.
My favorite thing about Louisiana is their abbreviation on their little scoreboard on the bug on top of the screen is L''Ziana, so it's how they say it, Louisiana. Yeah. That was my favorite thing about them. Your thoughts on Baylor today? Not a great first half, but the second half just turned on the Jets and played better defense than we've seen them play in weeks.
Yeah, there's a lot of takeaways, honestly, from this game. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the way Baylor won really wasn't necessarily the way that they've been winning games recently. I mean, getting major contributions from Caleb Lohner off the bench, seeing Everyday John have a really good rebounding day was great to see, because obviously, he struggled his last time out. So he looked a lot healthier and just more active today. And then Dale Bonner doing a great job as well off the bench defensively. So, yeah, I felt like in the first half it was kind of what we'd been watching, which was the defense giving up a ton of easy layups and dunks and just completely blowing defensive assignments. And the thing that I always have said about this Baylor team, at least every time that I watch them play, is they just don't look connected defensively often enough. And so you saw that in the first half. And then the second half, you saw a team that was much more locked in. They weren't allowing offensive rebounds. It felt like they were forcing UC Santa Barbara to really work for everything that they were getting. So, yeah, it was a great changing of the tide, I think, for Baylor in that second half. Great adjustments by the coaching staff. And then, of course, it doesn't help when you have two closers like L.J. Cryer and Adam Flagler to really ice the game late.
Right now, halftime, Creighton's up by 2, 28-26 on NC State. Obviously, right now, we don't know who's going to advance, the 6 or the 11 here, but just what do you think of Baylor now, having seen them in this first contest and knowing a little bit about who they might face? How do you feel about the round of 32?
Right. It's two very different matchups, in my opinion, between NC State and Creighton. And so, I mean, after today, if Baylor plays defense like they did today, then I expect them to win in the next round. The issue is that the two teams that they're going to play next are very good and very, balanced teams. I mean, you look at Creighton, they're good on offense and they're good on defense. They kind of do a lot of things well. And in that regard, it kind of reminds you a little bit of Iowa State. The difference is they're not quite as athletic as Iowa State, but they do have a 7-footer, which Iowa State, of course, didn't have. And then you look at NC State, it's more of a team that tries to outscore you. And so, they got guys who can really put up some big numbers. And if you've watched them play this year, they can push the tempo a little bit as well. And so they're pretty skilled. I think for Baylor, most of the time watching them this year, you would think that the NC State matchup would favor them more, just because I feel like they're going to get a lot of open looks. They're going to have a great opportunity to score, 75, 80 points against NC State, whereas Creighton is going to be more of a slower tempo, half-court offense type game with a team that plays pretty good defense. So that's kind of how I view it. But again, if Baylor plays like they did today, especially in the second half, then they really shouldn't have a problem with that second round game.
Baylor announced that they're going to have their their pro day later on this month, I think March 27th. And then I saw the little nugget from you that former Baylor, Utah, and Liberty quarterback Charlie Brewer would participate. That surprised me.
It surprised me too, and that's why I had to tweet it out immediately when I heard, because I feel like he's been such a polarizing guy throughout his entire time at Baylor, and even when he left Baylor, I feel like Baylor fans cared about his career and cared about watching him play, and so I'm happy to see him come back. I know he's got good friends who are going to be there as well when you think about Gavin Holmes, and then, of course, R.J. Sneed, who played this past season at Colorado. Now he's going to be back as well for this pro day. So I feel like it's going to be a great opportunity to kind of get him back into Waco, a guy who really did a lot for Baylor during that time period, 2017 through 2020. And obviously he's one of the most memorable Bears, honestly, of the last at least decade as far as Baylor football players go.
Grayson Grundhoefer, Sic'Em365.com recruiting analyst, co-host of the Bearcast with us here on 365 Sports.
All right, so Grayson, we know Siaki Ika is going to get drafted. I think Connor Galvin might. Who else in there do you think might get the call for sure?
Oh, you're asking me for sure.
Yeah,
I don't think there's anyone else in the for sure category. I think that you could make a case that a couple guys might get drafted for various reasons, such as, Dylan Doyle. If it's the right fit, if they feel like he can play fullback as well at the next level, be a big contributor on special teams, then okay, maybe a 6th or 7th round pick would be my guess. Just because he's not going to test out of this world. He's not really a guy who's ultra athletic. And so I think that might be an issue for him. I think when you look at guys who you're kind of like, okay, if he goes to the pro day and puts up some crazy numbers and you match that with his film, then things might get a little interesting. And the guy I'm looking at for that specific trade is Khalil Keith, because I think when he's been on the field for Baylor, he's been really, really good. He was hurt at times. Consistency, has been an issue at times, but I think in general, he has so much talent. And I think we saw that at times. He could absolutely dominate at times along the offensive line. And then the other one is Ben Sims. And I'm expecting Ben to get drafted, but I don't know that I can say it's an absolute sure thing, just because there are some areas of his game that definitely need to improve. But I could see a team taking a shot on him since he was so productive during his time at Baylor.
On the recruiting front, what are the main stories right now? What are the main, angles or storylines that you're monitoring at the moment?
I think a big one was probably the fact that both of Baylor's top quarterback prospects have been on campus this week. So New Braunfels Canyon quarterback Deuce Adams was on campus on Monday, and then today Aledo quarterback Haas Haney is on campus as well. So those two guys getting on campus within a week of each other, I think that's pretty big news. Baylor's still out there looking at various 2024 quarterbacks, but for the time being and for really the last month and a half, it felt like it's just been these two guys. And so they're kind of getting an opportunity to talk to both of them, getting to know them even more, and then, of course, evaluating them and seeing who, potentially is the better fit, but also seeing, just what these guys are about. And now Haas is still committed to Duke, but, Baylor's still in it for him in my eyes, and obviously him visiting shows that he does have some interest in the Bears. So that's been a key storyline. I also had the Under Armour camp this past weekend. Got to see Baylor's commits, Colton Siraki, Brock Jackson, Jaden Porter. They all performed really well. Colton especially, he had a great day. He's just a guy who's continuing to get better and better. And he moved to the center position this season, so he's really, really working hard in that area to make sure that he's performing at the best that he can be, and especially because he's going to be a center when he arrives at Baylor. So I was impressed by that. And there were, a ton of other guys at Under Armour camp, a ton of Baylor targets. But I think the one takeaway that I absolutely have to mention, Christian Robinson and Matthew Pallage are doing an awesome job on the recruiting trail. And just in the last probably, month and a half or so, I've heard their name, more than I heard Ron Roberts' name really during his time at Baylor. And that's not to say that Ron wasn't a good recruiter or a good coach by any means. He obviously was, but I just think on the recruiting side of things, you're just hearing those two guys consistently a whole lot. And I think that's going to be huge for Baylor's 2024 recruiting class.
Grayson, sometimes, well, a lot of times Baylor will post the lifter of the day, or maybe if it's the day or the week or whatever. And I have seen, like, I'll look at a name, and some of them obviously jump out. But the quarterback position, I see Chapin, and I also see Sawyer Robertson a lot. Have you heard much at all about just the off-season workout, strength, conditioning, et cetera, and how the quarterbacks have handled all that?
I think that this time period, it's really important that these two guys show a lot of leadership. And I know that that's something that I'm not sure a lot of people want to hear, but you got to remember during this time, it really is about getting stronger, but also building a bond amongst the players. You're doing a lot of things that, I know these guys, they go to college and they're obviously trying to work hard and want to work hard, but who are the guys that are able to wake up really early and get out there and put in the extra effort and the extra work? And who are the guys that are pushing them to get better and better and make sure they're competing at the best of their abilities? And I think that's huge for this time period right now. And I think it's more about that than it is the football side of things. That will come during the spring, and that will obviously be a huge talking point during all of spring football. But right now, they really got to be a cohesive unit, and they all got to push each other and compete. And I think that's something that they're doing a really, really good job of in the weight room, and then doing the conditioning part as well.
How much are you looking forward to spring drills opening up on Monday?
It's going to be awesome. I think it's a time period where you're going to see a group that's refocused and re-energized after what was a really tough season. I think when you look at from various angles, it just was a season where things didn't go right, but also they just weren't, I don't think they prepared to the level that they need to. And that's why you saw changes made, and that's why I think you've seen a lot of conversation about, kind of getting back that mojo that they had the year before, making sure the locker room has a lot of leaders in it. And that's also why you saw them take so many transfers this offseason. I really think there's a focus on getting back that mindset that they had during the 2021 season. I think that's the thing that I'm looking forward to the most, is just seeing a group that's re-energized and refocused, because they're going to need to be if they want to have a rebound season, because there's a lot of schools in the Big 12 right now that are very hungry and have a lot of momentum. And, I mean, the national media is not talking about this Baylor team, and I think that's probably a good thing, because they're talking about a lot of other schools instead.
Don't expect what happened after 2020 to have that kind of a turnaround, but just to get back in the winning ways and get to a bowl game and actually not just, find a way to just play, but actually be a part of the conversation during the year in October, November, December. Thanks for your time, Grayson. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate
Grayson
it.
Grundhoefer, Sic'Em365.com, recruiting analyst, posting things all the time in the premium section. He and Craig host the Bearcast every Tuesday, and with us on this show on Fridays, usually